And I don't think he's a more athletic prospect than Thibodeau.
Once a giant, always a giant. For me, it's only a giant.
What's going on YouTube? Diggy546. Definitely hit that subscribe button if you're new. Like the video if you like the video. And I won't tell if you click that bell. Let's go ahead and get into this. All right, so for the next couple of weeks or maybe through the off season or whenever it's relevant, I'm going to be throwing Brian Dable up there and Joe Schoen up there to show who the decision makers are and kind of just talk about it with them in mind. Now, I wanted to talk about this whole Trayvon Walker thing. I made a video, I think 2 weeks ago on Trayvon Walker, maybe two weeks and a couple of days ago on Trayvon Walker. And it's just, people have their own opinions about who Trayvon Walker is as a prospect. I don't know him as a person. He seems like a really good person. And I'm not saying that he's not going to be a good player. He can be a Pro Bowl level player. And that was never my criticism. My criticism is that Trayvon Walker has gone from a guy who was maybe looked at as a high second round guy, late first round guy, to the combine happens. And all of a sudden, Trayvon Walker is looked at as a top 3 pick. And I just don't understand how he's climbed because he still has the same tape. And for those of you who criticized my last video and said I only used the Alabama game and he's this superstar pass rusher and I just didn't see it because I only watched one game. Well, I've watched more than one game of Trayvon Walker and I see some of the same concerns. He doesn't rush with a plan. He's very raw. He has the athletic tools. He has the long arms. He has the strength. He even has a little bit of speed. I do kind of want to see more short area quickness from him, which I think is a little bit overrated from him. And I don't think he's a more athletic prospect than Thibodeau. I just don't see that. Maybe he can run faster over 40 yards. Maybe he can, do whatever other drill that they talk about in the combine. But when I put on the tape, I see Kayvon Thibodeau firing off the football. I see him beating people with sheer speed. I see a lot of things that are happening in fast motion instead of slow motion. And Trayvon Walker, he's not a slow person at all. We all know that. But he does not have that short area quickness, which I think is the most important thing for an edge rusher. I think short area quickness, the ability to use your hands, which he doesn't do well, the ability to bend the corner, which he does pretty well, especially for someone his size. And it's just really the ability to be that all-around guy who can use his hands, who can be a power guy, who can be a speed guy, who can convert speed to power. I just don't see enough refinement to justify taking him in the top 10. Now, maybe you take him at 12, maybe you take him at 15, maybe you take him at 20. But to say that this guy is the best pass rusher in the draft or the second best pass rusher in the draft, to me is ludicrous. And I've seen a lot of rumors saying that the Giants are interested. And they can't be completely rumors because we saw the Giants did their top 30 visits and 2 Georgia guys were there. James Cook, the running back out of Georgia, who I'm kind of excited to see if maybe he becomes a Giant. I like him. And Trayvon Walker. Now, Trayvon Walker has a connection with Ojulari. He has a connection with Andrew Thomas. Lorenzo Carter's gone. But I think there was one other Giants player who was here who was kind of, vlogging the whole thing of those two being in the building. But I don't. Will I throw things? Will I, lose my mind if we take Trayvon Walker? I can't say that I will because he does have that kind of potential. But to me, it's just a waste of a pick. It's a waste of a pick when you have serious concerns in the offensive line and you have Kayvon Thibodeau, he's been talked about as the number 1 pick in the draft for the past 3 years. And all of a sudden, these rumors have just come out about him not liking football and being arrogant and giving up on plays. And all of a sudden, he's falling out of the top 10 on mock drafts. But I think he's a much better player. And he's raw himself, but he's much more refined than Trayvon Walker is. You also have Jermaine Johnson, who I'm not that high on either. A lot of people want to take him top 6, 7, 8. I'm not that high on Jermaine Johnson either, but I think he's a much more refined prospect than Trayvon Walker, and I think he's much more explosive in the short area. and he has much more production on the field as far as sack totals, as far as tackles for loss. And then you look at George Karlaftis, a guy who can use his hands as if he's a kung fu fighter, as if he's Bruce Lee. I'm gonna have to come up with a nickname if the Giants take him with something to do with your hands because that dude's hands are crazy. They're constantly moving. He's got all the pass rush technique down. He's got short area quickness. He's got power. He can stop the run. All these guys can stop the run, including Trayvon Walker. But there are a ton of other pass rush options that I think are better players. And then you look at other guys who are better players. Kyle Hamilton's a better player. Not to say that I would take a safety over an edge, but Kyle Hamilton, I think, is a much better player. So you can justify that. Sauce Gardner, I think, is a better player. Derek Stingley, to me, is a better player. You got Evan Neal and Aquanu on the board. And if you're taking this guy at 5, you're probably going to let one of those tackles slip. You're probably not going to get one of those tackles because the Panthers, some people believe that they might take Kenny Pickett, but they might not. They very well could not take Kenny Pickett and just take the best offensive tackle on the board, which would give you probably no offensive tackles. But, when you look at those top 2 guys. Now, I think that Charles Cross will be there at 7 if we were to not take a tackle at 5. But I think he's a downgrade as far as the ceiling, not as a pass blocker, because his ceiling as a pass blocker, he's amazing. But it's a projection to kind of put him over to that right side. But as far as power run game, as far as a big imposing presence, and like a guy like Evan Neal or a guy like Aquanu, you will miss out on what I think are the 2 best offensive linemen in the draft. Now, moving on from that, Travon Walker, I just don't believe we should be taking him that high. I listed about what? I've listed about 8 players, 8 or 9 players, and that's just who I've listed. There are a couple of linebackers that I would take over him, and it's just because he's just that raw of a prospect. Now, I'm not sure how most of my followers and most of my subs feel about Travon Walker and most Giants fans, but it seems like Giants fans overwhelmingly don't like that idea of taking him that high. Now, again, I've seen some that think the opposite, but it seems like most fans don't agree with that. And with Joe Schoen, and I guess you can't really say Brian Dable because he was an offensive coordinator. But as far as Joe Schoen goes, right here, Joe Schoen is taking those big body defensive ends. He's taking those guys. He's taking Carlos Basham. He's taking Gregory Rousseau. He's taking I'm forgetting that other defensive end's name, but he's taking a lot of big defensive ends. And yes, they played a 4-3 there, so that could be why he took those guys. But he also could just think that that's what defensive ends should be in his system, or in whatever system in football there is. Because I remember him specifically saying that he's drafting guys with the need, with the idea that they can play in any system. So that may just be his preferred body type for defensive ends. And if it is, the 2 guys that you're looking at are Trayvon Walker, will probably be his first edge rusher, and then second edge rusher will be not Gregory Rousseau, but George Karlaftis, which I think are probably the third and I would say Karlaftis is ranked above him, but I don't think that those guys are your best value at 5 or at 7. And I'm not sure if Karlaftis was invited in that top 30 visit or not, but I would prefer him to Travon Walker because we would get more immediate production. And I do think he has a higher ceiling than some people give him credit for. But at the same time, I just don't think that the league is leaning towards that body type. I just don't see it. I don't see it. I have seen Trayvon Walker, back in the coverage and look pretty good doing it. But as far as that short area, being a guy that's that tall, it's a little concerning. It's a little concerning being that tall and the size that he is. I think he's better fit for 4-3. I think Jermaine Johnson is actually pretty tall too, but he's more of a lanky speed kind of guy. You're looking for Von Miller. You're not going to find Von Miller exactly, but you're looking for Von Miller. You're looking for Khalil Mack. You're looking for that 3-4 edge rusher while you're in this kind of defense. And I just don't think that Trayvon Walker is an every down, stand up edge rusher and a 3-4. And I do think if he does turn into that, I just don't think that that's worth picking in the top 5 because you're picking on a projection. Now, every draft and every draft player, every drafted player is going to be on a projection, but it's a super projection with him. You're just taking the intangibles, the tools, the physical tools, and saying that that's going to translate into an all-pro. Now, I'm going to wrap it up here, and this is going to be Joe Schoen's first pick if he takes Trayvon Walker at 5, and it's going to set the tone, just like Saquon set the tone for Dave Gettleman. Please don't mess this up, Joe Schoen. Please don't mess it up. You've been doing great so far. Do not mess this pick up by taking Trayvon Walker at number 5. If you made it this deep into the video, come on, just hit the subscribe button. I make Giants content primarily, draft content secondarily, and during the season, I'm going to be doing a lot of reacting to pretty much most of the NFL games and everything NFL. So if you made it this deep, go ahead and join the D6 squad.